Hi everyone, this is the lecture to accompany Chapter 5 in your textbook. This is a brief overview of the information in Chapter 5. Please watch it before you access MindTap. Okay, let's talk about adapting to your audience. While the traditional definition of an audience is a group of people gathered together in the same physical location to witness something of common interest to them, since the last century, that definition has expanded to include audiences for radio, television, and now the Internet. So an audience member does not have to be in the same physical location as the other audience members, and they don't even have to watch something at the same time to be an audience member. For instance, you could be watching this at your house, at school, or on your break at work, and none of you are watching at the same time, but you're all members of my audience. These days, the most appropriate definition of the term audience is the intended recipient of a speaker's message. If you recall, the most important part of public speaking is the audience. As a speaker, your connection to the audience is critical. If you can't relate to them or they can't relate to you, real communication can't take place. Your job is to prepare your speech with the audience in mind. That's the goal of audience-centered speech making. And the best way to do that is to know as much as you reasonably can about your audience. We took a big step towards that with your introduction speech. One of its main purposes was to find out about each other. The more information you have about the people in your audience, the more effective your speech is going to be. College speech classes are actually perfect for this. You really can get an impression of the overall makeup of the class. You have to understand the basic characteristics of your audience so you can tailor your speech to them. A target audience is the specific group you're most trying to reach. Advertisers and politicians are well aware of who their audience is and seek to most effectively reach them. However, as a public speaker, while there might be a particular audience you want to reach, it's highly unlikely that the entire audience in a room is going to be your target audience. It's more likely you'll have a much more diverse audience, including people who are really interested in your topic already, people who don't really care about your topic, and if it's a persuasive speech, people who already agree with you, people who are on the fence but are ready to listen, and people who, no matter what you say, will never agree to see things your way. In the face of all of these diverse audience members, what are some things you can do? First, you have to realize that no matter how diverse the audience, there are always some things they have in common regarding your topic. There are things we can all agree upon, and it's your job to find and express those things. Second, you need to establish your credibility with your audience on your speech topic. Audience members are more likely to listen to you if they think you know your subject and seem honest and committed to providing them the best information. Third, find and use good, credible supporting material that helps you define and explain your topic. If it's a persuasive speech, make sure your evidence is absolutely the best, most current, most valid information you can find. Choose language that can be understood by everyone in your audience. Be clear. Define things that might be unclear. And finally, pay attention to everyone in your audience, not just to those you might think of as your target audience. Just because you're pretty sure certain people won't be interested or won't be convinced, that doesn't make it okay to ignore them. They are still part of your audience, and they deserve as much respect as anyone else. There are some ways to look at and analyze your audience. One is by using demographic information. Demographics have to do with analyzing key definable and measurable characteristics like these: gender, age, ethnicity, education, religion, disability, social class, rural or urban environment, and relationship status. As far as our audience is concerned, some of these things can be determined by personal observation, just looking around at the audience. For others, you might need to ask, possibly by distributing a questionnaire, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You can use that information to determine the makeup of your audience, but you need to be careful not to stereotype. Remember that all people, no matter what groups they fit into, are individuals. They don't necessarily have certain characteristics or qualities simply because of their demographics. All this information does is give you a general picture of your audience. While demographic information gives you a picture of who your audience is, psychographic information can tell you something about how they think. Again, since audiences are made up of individuals, each of us has our own particular standpoint or worldview that shapes our values, attitudes, and beliefs. Our standpoint is the psychological place from which each of us views, interprets, and evaluates the world. Our values reflect what we think is good, bad, right, wrong, ethical, or unethical. Our attitudes reflect how we feel about particular things, whether we approve, disapprove, like, or dislike something. And our beliefs are the things we hold to be true. Unlike some demographic categories, we can't necessarily tell these things about people just by looking at them, but sometimes we can after interacting with them. Certainly, talking to your fellow classmates about how they feel regarding your topic can give you some insight. However, you might feel the need to collect information regarding your topic from the audience in a measurable way. That's where audience research questionnaires come in. I don't require these, but you're certainly welcome to use them. The more you know about your audience's understanding of or feelings about your topic, the more effectively you can research, organize, and present your speech to them. There are two basic types of questions you can ask: close-ended and open-ended questions. Close-ended means there's only one answer they can give from a set of possible answers, like a yes, no, or a multiple choice question. Open-ended questions are designed to get more specific information, as when you ask someone why they think a particular way. You can and should combine these two types of questions in a questionnaire to get the best possible responses. There are lots of ways to distribute questionnaires. You can type them up, print them out, and hand them out in class, or you can create a questionnaire through an online website like SurveyMonkey and send the link to your classmates. Here are some examples of closed and open-ended questions. A closed-ended question asks for a specific answer. In this case, the question, do you have a television in your bedroom? That can only be answered either yes or no. An open-ended question seeks more specific information, as in, what changes, if any, would you make to our school's basic course requirements? That's obviously more than a yes or no answer. Combine these two types is always a good idea. This last example, do you believe that the death penalty reduces crime, yes or no? And then why or why not? That will give you an answer that you can use statistically and an answer that goes into more depth on this person's beliefs about the topic. Now, once you've gathered this information from your audience, there are a few different ways to use it. First, it serves to help you understand more about your audience members, what they know about the topic and how they feel about it. Second, it often gives you supporting material you can actually use in your speech, data for summary statistics, and comments you can use for quotes. Using summary statistics, you would generally use percentages of the answers to the close-ended questions, like in this example about the effects of having a television in your bedroom. More than 90% of the people sitting in this room said that they have a television in their bedroom, and 75% of you said you watch shows on it every day. You can also use direct quotes, which are the responses to your open-ended questions, as testimony to help explain and illustrate your ideas, as in this example about what changes should be made to CSN's basic course requirements. According to one audience member, the math requirement for a degree here at CSN is the one thing that's keeping me from graduating this semester. It should be changed. Not only is this really good support for your ideas, it also resonates with the audience because it's about them. So as I said before, it's not a requirement that you do this, but it's always a good idea to find out more about what your audience thinks about your topic. Public speakers don't just have to adapt to their audience. They have to consider all aspects of the speaking situation and be willing to adapt to things like the location, the occasion, and even the time of day. Where you give your speech is important. A speech given indoors in a small conference room would be presented very differently than one given outdoors on the quad. How loud you speak, whether or not you need a microphone, how you would display any visual aids, those are only a few of the things you'd need to consider. If your speech is presented online, your audience may not even be in the same room with you, so you'd need to consider how you appear to them. You're lucky because you know the location of the speeches you're going to give in our classroom, so you'll be familiar with it. That won't always be the case, so you need to evaluate the setting and make adaptations that will help you present your speech effectively. The occasion is important too. You need to know why people have gathered for this speech. Is it a voluntary audience in which people are there because they want to be there? For example, a guest lecturer on campus. Or are they a captive audience, like our class? You're really there because you have to be. People who want to be there for a speech are more likely to be engaged listeners. Captive audiences, on the other hand, might not be as motivated to listen. So you need to take those things into consideration and make sure you provide ample reasons for your audience to want to pay attention. And even the time of day can have an impact on the audience. People tend to be more alert earlier in the day, although you can't necessarily say that about every college student. And they also tend to be distracted by hunger right before lunch and more tired immediately after lunch. And of course, it's more difficult to listen at the end of a very long day. So you have to keep those things in mind and be ready to again give your audience a reason to want to listen to you. The best way to get an audience to pay attention to you is by making yourself into a credible speaker. Credibility is what Aristotle called ethos, and it has to do with the audience's perception of your competence, trustworthiness, dynamism, and sociability. Competence means that you appear to be well-informed and knowledgeable about the topic. Trustworthiness has to do with appearing honest, ethical, sincere, reliable, and appearing to have the audience's best interests in mind. Dynamism has to do with the level of enthusiasm and confidence you portray about your topic. And sociability has to do with the degree to which they relate to you. Do you appear friendly and responsive to them? Now, here's the thing. It's not your perception of yourself that matters here, although having a positive attitude about yourself can help. It's the audience's perception of you that matters, and that's why we put audiences first. Do your best. Be prepared. Know what you're talking about. Don't try to fool or manipulate us. Have some excitement about sharing your topic with the audience, and frankly, smile occasionally. They'll grant you credibility, and they will be willing to listen to you. Okay, you're ready to move on to MindTap.